Hey, welcome. We're calling to order the regular meeting of the Bellevue School Board, Bellevue School District Board of Directors. Today is Thursday, October 6th. And at this time, we'll do roll call.
Jane Aris.
Seema Seraphan,
Joyce Shuey.
Interim Superintendent Art Jarvis.
Okay, I expect Directors Chu and Watson may be joining us a bit later. So at this time, we will go to, I will ask our Executive Director Harrison to please introduce what I understand are our two students who will be joining us today.
Thank you, President Seraphan. We're fortunate tonight. We actually have two students, and they are both from Newport High School. First of all, Mihir Panchamarthi is a senior, and Kylie Schulman is a sophomore. So come on up, and they will lead the pledge and the land acknowledgement, and then share a little bit with you from Newport High School. Welcome, you two. Thank you for being here. And I should also introduce their teacher, a leadership teacher is with them tonight, Karen Landau Walters, Newport High School.
Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. So we will start with, is it Mihir who will do the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. We'll follow you.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all.
We acknowledge that we are on the Indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Duwamish and Snoqualmie tribes. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. We reflect on the historic context that brings us to reside on this land and accept responsibility to interrupt erasure. We commit to an ongoing partnership with the Snoqualmie tribe as we listen to, learn from, and lead with their guidance.
Thank you. So at this time, I think I get an update from, I think each of you. So your choice, who wants to start? We'd love to hear from you.
Okay, before I start, I want to say this isn't really a way of saying that I don't like Newport, negative or grudges Newport. I love Newport, but it's just, problems I think me and a lot of other peers faced. Okay, so coming back from the pandemic, obviously it's not just us. I think it's all around the world. People have been affected, but I think the competitiveness of Newport academics are kind of worse than that in my opinion, because over the pandemic time, about 2 years, I think it really affected everyone's way of learning and kind of took their minds off, changed it a bit, I guess. And when you come back and get thrown into Newport's competitive environment, I think kind of affected us all. Especially for me, it was in calculus and a lot of other friends actually, an overwhelming amount. So I failed calculus last year in junior year because of I couldn't keep up with the workload. I couldn't understand. It just wasn't working out. I thought, I could fix it. I was in tears. I was like, someone could help me out. I could fix this, right? My GPA dropped. I was really stressed. I went and talked to my counselor. She was like, you could retake the class next year online over the summer or something like that. You can figure it out. And later she told me the district was not offering calc. That sent me into mode of panic, and a lot of other guys as well and friends. We all didn't know what to do, so we kind of lost. We were hopeless. But we found Apex and stuff like that, finally helped us out. But I think this all connects to one thing of how there weren't really much resources for us to turn to, or how, not on purpose, but the school kind of puts academics or classes in front of our mental health, which I don't think is a good thing. I think there should be a priority on students' well-being over the classes. And this Newport's environment and the obligation to take the same classes, because most people take this pre-calc, AP Calc, that step in Newport, and I think a lot of people are obliged to do the same thing, even though they know they can't and they know they shouldn't. I think I was one of those students. So I was just, ideally, I think Newport or just BSD in general should have more resources, and because mental health wise, I don't think we have many resources or people to turn to. I felt like I didn't, and a couple of my peers didn't. So if we could have certain ways or things like students could turn to either just academics wise, mental health wise, or anything they need help with, I think there should be more resources for us to turn to. Yep, that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Mahir. Thank you. And nothing you're saying suggests that you don't like your school. I think we see it as honest and necessary feedback. So thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for your time today. Relating to what Mahir was saying about Newport's academic rigor, I want to bring up the topic on how academics often get in the way of personal life. As many of you might know, yesterday was Yom Kippur, which is a Jewish holiday where Jews fast for around 25 hours. I'm a practicing Jew myself, and although there's an option provided by the Bellevue School District and all school districts to skip school, I often find myself behind and without opportunities to catch up. Each year, I attend my regular classes on Yom Kippur, and each time I don't feel mentally prepared for a day of school. Yom Kippur is supposed to be a day of reflection, and instead I feel subjected to tests and other activities that drain my energy. If I would have skipped school yesterday, I would have missed one project, 2 tests, and a vital part of homecoming, which as a member of my school's leadership, I feel obligated to assist with. Especially at Newport, I've noticed that the boundaries between school and academics become fuzzy, and it negatively impacts students' mental health. I understand that not everyone can be required to learn about traditions of a small community at Newport, but I greatly appreciate the gestures people have made in recognition of my culture. As Newport and other schools continue to grow and change, I hope we can better embrace our diverse community and support students through academics and otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie. Thank you to both of you. I think at this time I'd like to make a motion, and I ask for a second for the approval of tonight's agenda.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Hearing no objection, the motion carries. I would like to now go through our acknowledgements. This is a very important month. We have a lot of acknowledgements, and so I'd like to read all of them. They're on your screen as well. But the month of October is Indigenous Peoples Month. It is Disability History Month and National Disability Employment Awareness Month. It's Hispanic Heritage Month, which actually starts in mid-September and runs through mid-October. It's Learning Disabilities Awareness Month. It's Czech Heritage Month, National Principles Month. And then there are specific days, which I will just read in order, starting from October 2nd, which was National Custodian Day. Chonyang Festival Seniors Festival, which was October 4th. Yom Kippur, Kylie just talked a little bit about that, was yesterday. International Walk to School Day was yesterday. Malwid Nabi, which is tomorrow. National Indigenous Peoples Day, which is on October 9th. Sukkot, which is October 9th. The 10th to the 14th of October is National School Lunch Week. October 11th is World Mental Health Day. October 16th is Shmini Atzeret. October 16th is Simchat Torah. October 17th is Indigenous Peoples Day. October 17th is also, I think I said Indigenous Peoples Day. It's also International Pronoun Day. The week of October 17th is National School Bus Safety Week. And finally, October 19th is Unity Day. We celebrate and acknowledge all of these traditions, and we invite you, if we missed any, to please let us know. So thank you. At this time, I would ask our board for a second to approve tonight's consent agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? And I do want to just acknowledge that Directors Chu and Watson have since joined, so we have our full board. Directors Chu, Shui, and Watson are all joined by online, along with our superintendent. So is there any discussion of our consent agenda or any item that someone wishes to take out? Hearing none, I ask for a vote. All those in favor of approving tonight's consent agenda, please say aye.
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 I hear no nays. Okay, so I have, okay, 4 votes, and we may have trouble hearing from Director Chu, and I'm guessing that might be a logistics issue. So with that, our consent agenda is approved, and we move to our superintendent update. At this time, I'd ask for Superintendent Jarvis, if you're able, I see you, if you're able to join in, would love to get your update. Thank you.
Thank you, President Sarafan. First, I would just acknowledge, I appreciate the fact that we live in a universe right now in which we can go to remote if necessary. I find myself with a cough that probably would not be welcome and shared with others, although it's COVID negative, at least at the moment. But I thought it better to stay remote. So thank you for that privilege. I would note just one thing before I turn it over to Deputy Eva Collins, that National Principals Month is this month. I think we sometimes underestimate our principals and what is on their shoulders. Every piece of research that has ever been done on student success and school success and district success points back to the principal being the most key element of all. So I say that to honor our principals, to say thank you to them, and to invite others to recognize their contribution to Bellevue and really education in general. Tonight, I wanted to basically take my time and ask Deputy Eva Collins to update the board. The board has had a couple minutes, but particularly the community, on things that are underway in the school district. And so some of the things that are happening as we got past the opening of schools. So I would like to hand this over to our longtime Deputy Superintendent, Eva Collins, and say, Eva, please share some of the things you've been eager to share with the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jarvis. I think we have a few slides to put up to illustrate what we had shared with you in a brief, I think, 3-minute time in our last meeting, where Dr. Aramaki and I shared with you a few of the things that are happening. We just wanted to go a little bit deeper, not much deeper, but a little bit deeper on a few of these highlights. And Dr. Aramaki had to leave for a family emergency, so he'll likely want to share more with you when at another time, but I'll try to do justice to some of his projects as well. Next slide. One of our major initiatives this year is Global Competency. This aligns to our Creators of the Future World vision. And this year is really a year of us just developing the shared vision and understanding of what is global competency, what does it look like for our students, what would that look like in terms of education and outcomes. So we are exploring that, we're learning a lot, and right now we're at the stage of looking at what's the overlap with global competency standards and outcomes, benchmarks, with other benchmarks that we have in standards such as social emotional learning, and we're finding a lot of overlap. And this is really helpful for us in terms of recognizing that there are many things that we do that we can just build on to deepen our global competency initiative. So this slide just shows something that we worked on just yesterday with our certificated administrators in the district on doing a crosswalk of the social emotional standards and global competency. And this comes under the domain for global competency of multiple perspectives, which is the idea that our students would understand their own perspective, step one, build care and compassion, and then understand an issue from multiple perspectives. And before getting into a solving space, you would want to involve multiple voices and perspectives at the table in order to come to a better solution. And I think that's something that we have acknowledged through our critical criteria as a way to get multiple perspectives and the deep value in doing that. So that's just a short update on global competency. I will say that at our building level, there's a lot of igniting going on where people are in different places, but at some of our schools, they're super excited and taking this even more deeply and starting to do some activities with their students around global competency. Next slide, please. We are all in with math. We've talked about this at when we talked about our annual plan. It's a focus at all levels. We've made math professional learning a priority for our educators, for our central office leaders, for our administrators. As you know, we adopted new materials last year in K-7. This year, we're also adopting new materials for algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. But this year, we're really fully implementing, which means that we need to monitor implementation and student outcomes so that we can adjust or supplement curriculum as needed and to provide purposeful professional learning. So we're conducting cycles of continuous improvement and collecting data, and we have a pretty structured plan on the implementation of assessments, interim assessments, and how we'll be looking at these at the district level, at the school level, at the classroom level, and implementing math PLCs at all levels. We also have, our schools have been working on tier 2 interventions based on their data and matching interventions to specific student needs. And so that's been a critical part of using this first round of student data that we've collected this fall. Next slide, please. This is one of Dr. Armaki's projects that he's leading, the Heritage Language Project. And we are excited to share that we received a $100,000 grant from OSPI to further our work on heritage language. And this is where we're looking at how can we build, provide opportunities for our students to build their heritage language and for students to learn a new language. So we're looking at some of our languages that we have not traditionally offered in the district and how we can offer those starting at the elementary level and what are some opportunities that we could provide. The next step for us would be a community engagement opportunity to explore what kind of languages the community would be interested in us providing, and then just working out the logistics on how we can make that happen. So languages that have so far been shared by the community are Arabic, Hindi, Korean, and Russian, but likely many more. Next slide, please. We've talked to you about this very important initiative and something that the board has been deeply concerned about as well over the years, and that is supporting our students and families in greatest need. And you're familiar with the Family Hub that has opened at Highland and serves all families in the district. We recognize that not all families can come to the hub. And so our family services folks have been going out into the community to support families. For example, Mary's Place is a new place of residence for some of our families experiencing homelessness. And we've gone out to Mary's Place to enroll students, and we've brought in community organizations to provide basic needs and clothing and hooking people up with healthcare, for example. It's been going quite well. And let's see, what else did I want to share with you? Oh, we've also been working with NISO. They've been in the hub, and Bellevue Life Spring and YES. So we've had a number of community organizations coming to the hub. And at Highland, we also have the medical clinic, you may recall, and so the community health center. And so that's right across the hall. So it's really a great way for our families in Bellevue to get connected with community support. Next slide, please. I'm super excited about this, and I just don't know a whole lot about it, but this slide is about some of the innovations that we're seeking in multiple services. the picture up here is, it's really just from Google Images, but it's a picture of a student who's wearing the virtual reality goggles. And through the virtual reality, they can see a hologram of a person providing sign language. The student that is with the goggles on is deaf and is participating in the classroom and is learning through the sign language that's being provided through this technology. So these are just some ideas that are emerging from some of our departments like special education about how we can use innovative approaches and technology, for example, to really go out there and find new ways to engage and serve our students. Next slide, please. Okay, this is also back to language. This one is about language access though, and not about the deepening of the heritage language, but about serving our families for whom English is not their first language. There is legislation that does require us to do a number of things that we of course want to do in order to ensure our families have access to information, but we want to go above and beyond that. So we do have a task force, a group of people working on language access. This includes the state requirements, but also goes above and beyond. Many of the things that we're working on are still in the idea stage, meaning that we will be engaging students and families to help develop these ideas or come up with different ideas for better serving, informing, supporting, and empowering our multilingual families. So for example, one idea could be the use of family ambassadors who speak the same language as another family, and as they come in, that we have these sort of, you know, like the welcome wagon idea of being able to hook family ambassadors up with families who speak that language in the school, or if we do not have a family ambassador in that school with that language, in another school. And we've used this program when I was the principal at Bennett many years ago. It works really well. It's very personalized and supportive. In addition, we've talked about maybe making little a library of videos where perhaps our family ambassadors could be those that would provide these videos in multiple languages that are just mini videos, but provide a lot of information on school lunch or what is the school day like. We could have little videos of what the school day actually looks like, you know, in the classroom. So just what some of the routines are, or all the kinds of information that all parents want to know, and that's really not accessible for parents whose first language is not English. Next slide. And this is our final slide. It's very exciting that we're working on a project to develop a K-12 aeronautics STEM pathway that would provide students with courses. Many of the courses we already have, but have not sequenced, but also additional courses that we could look at and experiences for our kids to grow and get certification in aeronautics. And we're very excited about this. It's still in the infancy stage, but this one is coming along quite quickly, and I think you can look forward to more information about this soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that conclude the superintendent update?
It does
Okay,
conclude the
thank you.
superintendent update. Thank you.
Thank you to both of you. Okay, we move along. We have our public comment now. And second. So under item 4.1, we have all the details of public comment. I just want to primarily say that we are grateful to receive public comment. We appreciate the thoughtful input of our community. There's a few things I'd just like to say about public comment. It's clearly the time when we receive public comment during our meeting, but we also want to remind you that we have some other pathways as well, which are email, as well as phone calls. Our email is board@bsd405.org. But the highlight I would like to flag is that the details of our public comment are written, and we ask you to please make sure you take a look at them, especially our expectations, which are outlined in item 4.1 on our agenda. They include the direction on how members of the public can comment in writing, as well as how we expect speakers to engage in a civil manner and not in any kind of communication that would be identified as unacceptable, and it's outlined there. We're reminding speakers that you have only 2 minutes and that you will be shown a timer. And finally, that we will be listening to your comments intently and carefully, but we generally don't respond to them in this setting. So with that, can I see I think we generally have a list of our public commenters, and I see tonight we have Joel Ingram. So Mr. Ingram, I know you're familiar with the process, so thank you for being here, and we'll start the timer whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Director. Today, I'm here to celebrate 2 accomplishments and to say thank you. Last spring, the district launched Letters Professional Development for K-5 teachers. Letters focuses on literacy instruction based on the science of reading. Bellevue now has 160 teachers currently enrolled for the next year in Letters training. 80 started last spring and another 80 are starting this fall. I don't think this room would hold 160 teachers. Because of this investment, students are going to benefit and outcomes will climb, especially those who struggle the most. Following up on an elementary school in the district I talked about last year, I have some more data to share. This elementary has an intensive focus on literacy and is leveraging the science of reading to help improve outcomes. Looking at K2 DIBELS data before the pandemic at the end of year 2019, 68% were at or above grade level. Then during COVID, that number dropped, but by the end of year 2021, that number climbed to 83%. Then it climbed again by the end of year 2022 to 86%. That is an 18-point improvement over 3 years. That type of improvement is off the charts. Said another way, if there were 100 kids, 32 were struggling with basic literacy skills at the end of 2019. At the end of 2022, there would be only 14 students who were struggling with basic literacy skills. That number was more than cut in half. It is time to get excited about the work the district is doing and its teachers are doing around literacy and the science of reading. Thank you, teachers, and thank you, BSD.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment tonight. Ms. Worth, do we have any other commenters?
I do not have anyone else in person. If any of our online attendees would like to make a public comment, I will ask that they please use the raise hand button or any of the reaction buttons at this time to let us know that they would like to make a public comment. Thank you. I see Ross Gooding, and Ross, I'm going to click a button that will enable you to turn on your mic and camera. So we'll just ask you to do that and then say hello to us, please.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
All right, thank you. Thanks for giving me the time to just chat here. I know I kind of came in at the last minute. Congratulations to all the principals that are doing a great job in a difficult time. There is one principal, however, who doesn't seem to be doing such a great job. He was exposed recently for making some very inappropriate and somewhat lewd and explicit statements on social media.
But we do not make, our rules are pretty specific, Mr. Gooding.
Okay,
About,
I want to make sure.
This is not the forum where we speak about specific complaints about staff, including principals.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
outlined in our agreement.
Thank you for the clarification. I just wanted to ask 2 questions regarding this general topic. Is that okay?
Depending on how you form your question and whether it complies with our rules, you can ask your question, but as indicated at the outset, we don't generally respond to questions here.
I will be sensitive to what you just said. Essentially, I'm concerned about the hiring practices and the vetting of employees, which appears to be below standard. And also, the district has repeatedly said, according to student input, that they would like employees and staff that look like the students. So I'm wondering, in this case of this one particular principal, why were not Hispanic or qualified Asian candidates looked at instead of this person who apparently is problematic? And again, I'm not criticizing them, just asking a question. Why were these other candidates either overlooked or possibly not looked at all, given the district's stated priorities that students are, they respond to people that look
Sure.
like them?
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Mr. Gooding.
I feel it necessary to identify to individuals who are members of the public that when the district has ongoing investigations of complaints that are pending against personnel, the district has an obligation to provide those employees a full and fair investigation and does not speak about the circumstances of a pending investigation in a public forum. And it would not be appropriate for the board to the issues to be brought before the board at this time as the investigation continues to be ongoing. And any presumption that Mr. Gooding has set forth about the stat or the qualifications or fitness of the individual he's referring to would be information that would be shared with the board once an investigation is completed.
Thank you. Ms. Worth, do we have any other commenters?
We do not have anyone else that has indicated they would like to give public comment.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we go to our item 5.1, which is Executive Director Harrison. It's the third reading of our board policy 1822, which has to do with training and development of board directors. For the context of others, we essentially had brought this up twice, and then there was an additional sort of opportunity for input that a board director had asked for, and I believe that's been received by you, and you've proposed what is now should be attached as 5.1.
Correct.
If we can maybe have it projected, that might be helpful.
Thank you, President Serafin. And I would ask Jess if you could post the clean version. Oh, look at that. You're ahead of me. I appreciate that. And if you could just make that a little bit bigger, that would be great. That is not the version that is posted. The version that's posted on board docs actually has some green highlighted sections. I'm not sure why that is. Ms. Worth, do you?
You need the markup section or the markup version, John, if you want to see the green. I don't know if that shows up in the clean version or not, but it shows up in the markup.
Okay. Well,
Also, I have a comment on it when it shows up. There's a suggestion I'd like to make before we go forward, but I'll wait till you've shown it first.
Yeah, that's great. So what you see highlighted in yellow is.
Sorry, can I have it made bigger? It's very hard to see.
So what you see highlighted in yellow is revisions since second reading. In that highlighted yellow section where you see struck language, it now reads in the second sentence, and I'll just read it to make it clear. In addition to encouraging board director participation in appropriate board conferences, workshops, and relevant professional association meetings, the board commits to, and this is new language, since Monday, to identifying and organizing areas for collective and collaborative growth and opportunities that optimize board director participation and include the superintendent as appropriate. So the new language since Monday is the board commits to identifying and organizing areas for collective and collaborative growth and opportunities that optimize.
Sorry, when you say since Monday, isn't this what we netted out on during our discussion?
Yes, and so what this is why I did the green highlight was the changes with it was the one with a couple of changes that I've made since Monday.
Okay, I think Director Chu has her hand up.
Yeah, thanks for making the changes, John. I think this is heading in the direction that was intended. But the way that it was changed, I'd like to propose we change just a tiny bit more, because by saying that we have identifying these collective and collaborative growth opportunities, and we have other opportunities that optimize the board director participation, that's not really the intent. So, okay, sorry, I was reading off that. So now I'm gonna pause for a sec so I can see. All right, there we go. So I would like to motion that we amend this before it gets presented. I'd ask that we amend it to say the board commits to identifying and organizing collective and collaborative growth opportunities that optimize board director participation and that include the superintendent as appropriate. You get rid of areas for, you get rid of and, you get rid of and that's it pretty much. Then it goes as read. So I'll read again what I'm asking it to be changed to. Commits to identifying and organizing collective and collaborative growth opportunities that optimize board director participation and that include the superintendent as appropriate.
Is that your motion?
It's not a motion because we haven't motioned to put this in. I'm asking John if he would be willing to change it to that, and then we can motion that we approve the amended, that we just approve the amended proposal or the amended.
I think that language strengthens and makes the statement more succinct. I would definitely support that.
I'm just wondering, is it possible if, Ms. Worth, if you have it in front of you, I just wonder if those changes can just be made to the document as we speak, and if so, it might allow the motion to be made more cleanly.
They are projecting a PDF, so that might be hard.
Oh, okay. If it's a PDF, then that's not going to work. All right. Do we have a motion?
I motion that we approve the policy proposal as amended just now.
I second. Thanks. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Hearing no opposition, the motion passes.
Thanks,
Thank you very
John.
much, board. Thank you very much.
Okay, at this time we have director discussion, and I will suggest we consider going in alphabetical order. Director Aris, would you like to start?
Well, Director Chu, do you want to talk a little bit about the general meeting from the WASA meeting? Share with the public?
Sure, I can cover some of that. Do you want to put some comments forth, or do you want me to start? I'm happy for you to start if you have other topics.
Well, I thought it was long and it was great. I appreciated all the effort that everyone put in. There's some great, I think, outcome. There was a initiative that was directed by students, I think it was Shoreline and Seattle, around sexual harassment, which was brought forward even with our students here. And that initiative was passed, which was, I think, great. They was started by the students. We also brought one regarding having fully funded for all activities, including STEM, and that also passed as well. And it was there was a general support and acknowledgement from other school boards. They appreciate that Bellevue School District is bringing it forward, is because we have more experience in having those programs here, whereas a lot of the schools, they can't even start it. So they appreciate that we're leading that way and asking that it's fully funded across. Those are two that I kind of wanted to bring up. Are there any other things or comments you want to mention?
Sure, I'll put a couple things forward. As Director R said, thank you to the whole board for the work in discussing the positions, and thank you especially to Director Aris for her work really going through and championing some of this work. The things of note are that the vast majority of things that we cared about for our students were passing with support across the state. But there were a few exceptions, and I do want to call those out. Before I call those out, I would like to mention that that our proposal, which was the one that Director Ars mentioned about STEM support, did pass. And the real element of appreciation for that was saying Bellevue is perceived to have lots of money. They do have these programs, and yet they are initiating legislative advocacy to get everyone funding for that, which I think it brings up two things. One, it shows that we can collaborate, and it doesn't have to be districts who are in a richer community and districts who aren't. There's good collaboration means across the state, and there's recognition of it when it happens. But two, there continues to be a perception that Bellevue is fully funded for everything, and we aren't, including our STEM work and the facilities that it takes to have those. That's an enormous cost, and it's entirely ignored by the state. The folks are really in a huge agreement about generally supporting whole child, supporting social emotional needs, supporting that. There were a few folks who were a little worried about, well, what does that mean though? And but the things where we ran into a few bits of lack of support. One, and most importantly, is a lack of support across the state for increasing the levy lid, even with LEA, which is the the funds that are provided to compensate for those who don't fully raise the to their levy lids. And the feeling is actually motivated it's not just like, oh, not those King County schools that have a lot of property or whatever getting that. It's actually a tricky thing even with our own partners, because some of them don't have the commercial base, so they're not able to take that burden off their own residential taxpayers in the same way we are. And in the small schools, it's kind of split as well because of the property rich versus property poor districts. So it's viewed as a major equity issue. And unfortunately, the way the state is pushing folks to really vie for funds with one another and to sort of feel like we're always competing with the other districts, it's pressing us to not support each other and to draw towards a lowest common denominator in funding for our districts. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to do work there, advocating with many of the districts who do recognize that while the state's not fully funding, we shouldn't be letting any funding sources go, especially if the communities are willing to support it. But when we do that, we also have a responsibility to our sister communities to go and advocate to make sure the state is filling in those gaps that we're trying to fill in with community funds. But in reality, those should be funded by the state and federal government, particularly the tens of millions of dollars we're short in special education funding. So that's one. And the other place where we'll be disappointed to know is that there's a lot of hesitation in trying to push back on and trying to press forward for our kids to have a safer space to be in school. So anything about gun control on school property, even not just gun control in general, but even on school property, has high resistance. There are smaller schools out there that have done things like equip principals with weapons, and it's viewed as a local control issue. And so by viewing it as a local control issue, there's a lot of hesitation in terms of trying to promote statewide press to keep our kids away from firearms during the school day and to have a safe physical environment for them. So those are two that I think were the toughest. So if you've got opportunities to advocate or what have you in your own circles, those are things you should be aware of. But overall, the state is in a good place. Equity-wise, we got a win and a loss in the same time, and one of them, the community wanted so badly, and I know we all agree, to recognize that equity has to be a comprehensive version of equity, that there are so many groups that have been marginalized and underserved, and we needed to do that. But we did that at the cost of having racial equity in the recognized and called out as a particular thing that needed attention. And that just brings forward how important it is that we press WASDA to have live amendments. Without live amendments, we can't understand what the resistance is and then propose an amendment that actually brings us all closer together. We're just kind of stuck with whatever a few people came up with before a conversation ensued. So that, I think, Jane, I think that's enough highlights. Does that sum it up for you?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Did I Did you mention about the directors, the diversity one? That one was also a challenge at the end.
Oh, I don't remember saying too much about that. So do you wanna comment on that? Just there's a press, I think, where folks are worried about the language that we're using and the implications. That one was about staff, right? Supporting the diversity of staff.
I know it was the one directors of color.
Oh, directors, not staff. Okay, yeah, there were two that were in there.
That one was one that was challenged quite a bit by. No, okay.
It did get challenged, but it did get passed, right? So we got there's I think that in general, the other thing that we're seeing across the state is a discomfort with how to deal with issues around equity. And if equity pushes us into a place that makes people think that it's not, that it becomes we're trading off one group for another, or we're privileging one group over another, or they feel like we're threatening some other group, then there's a worry. And so there are things that just kind of trigger people. So that's one of the places. And there were some attempts that did not go through around trying to get rid of equity in some of our policies, but those didn't succeed. So there's clear discomfort and wondering and fear about some things, but overall the large support across the state, and we had one of the best participating years ever, I think, and this is what I had heard rumors of. So these things prevailed. There were difficult conversations, but people have prevailed in their commitment.
Okay. That's the main thing that I'd like to talk about. There's another item regarding as far as us being part of the school board and advocating for our students in our community. I'm wondering if it's a good time or a good year for us to consider having larger conversation or having conversations with the city council, given that I believe we have a study session later on around attrition and so on. So I could bring it up at that point, but with that, we may need to do more work with our city council to see what we can do to partner up and have a better support in that space.
And Jane and I were
talking. Sorry, I was wondering if maybe just high level, even you want to just describe the opportunity.
Well, I don't
like
yeah.
to do that or save it for another time, or.
Well, so Director Chu and I have had a conversation about reaching out with a couple of the council members as being liaison for legislation and start conversation there to see if there's a possibility or desire to work with us and having, this is the planning year for them to, as far as the overall infrastructure and how to best plan out the city. And this is the month where public could make comments as far as, whether we like or dislike the plans they're putting forward or what we would like for it to be included. It may be also, so Christine, Director Chu and I have talked about reaching out to them and seeing if we do need to make a comment, given the understanding there's the projection is that we'll be going through attrition for the next 10 years and its impact, and the real estate being one of the impacts of attrition, that maybe we need to start having a conversation of what are they doing, or are they aware of that real estate having an impact on our student body?
I think what I'm unclear about is whether this is like to be said on behalf of the board, or if it's a comment on behalf of the district. And maybe I'm a little confused on that piece. Director Chu, did you?
I jump in? Yeah, because I've got a couple comments on this that might clarify or might continue to raise the question. I'm not sure. So I think there are a couple of things going on here. First, the city is in the midst of its strategic planning process, and they are welcoming public comments through sometime in mid to late October. Melissa DeVita on our staff, our Deputy Superintendent of Ops, I believe, represents us on a special like planning group that's part of that. So it's not like we're out of the conversation. We have some great representation there, is my understanding. The real question is, you know, they've got that going on at the same time that we're going to look at our strategic plan and our growth and planning plan. So we've got those two things going on right now, and we're hoping to make sure that there's some convergence there. So yeah, that's something that we need to think about district-wide. In addition, there are two other opportunities to think through. One is short-term, what are the advocacy places? So as your ledge and backup ledge reps, we were going to reach out and just see if there were any opportunities that are convergent with our ledge platform and the city's ledge platform, where we can work with our legislators together to promote some of these causes. And so not just working with other school districts, but working cross-agency so that the legislators are getting a more powerful picture. So that's one. And then the second thing is that, or the third thing rather, is that in addition to the specific opportunity to comment on their plan, the general opportunity to look at short-term legislative collaboration, advocacy collaboration, the third thing is in the new year, might it be wise, it's been proposed several times and we've never executed, to have a joint session, an actual official joint session of the city council and the school board to bring up issues and have conversations about places where we are have overlapping impacts about the well-being of our citizens and how we might actually optimize and support one another in that work and kind of increase awareness across the bodies. But that I think is a medium-term thing as opposed to a short-term thing. So does that help clarify, Director Serafan, or does that just raise more questions for you?
I think it's an interesting proposal. I'm just wondering, this is, I would expect maybe the superintendent would probably want to have discussed that probably with the mayor of our city. So I don't see a proposal right now. I hear an idea from which I think is an interesting one. I'm looking forward to tonight's study session, but it feels like it's a proposal that would be potentially cutting across some things that are also in operation space. So
yeah, I think Director Ars was bringing it up. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, Jane, but I think to get some feedback from the board, like, is there any interest in this? You know, as you guys, as she and I talked to the city council about any opportunities for this advocacy, is there anything you'd want us to explore further? I hear the piece of feedback here. If Jane wants to kind of promote this work together with all of us, that you would want the superintendent and mayor to sort of have a conversation as well about that. Is there any other feedback? I think, Jane, is that what you were thinking tonight, was getting some feedback from?
Yeah, I was hoping to get some kind of feedback if this is something that the rest of the board would be interested in participating. It's because when you think about the government space has multiple layers, and Deputy Mosa Davida has been talking with the city at the city level, but the pulse I got is that at the council level, they're not fully aware of what is going on or the impacts that we are about to go through. And so to bring the awareness to all the layers, it may be wise that all the layers are that we have a conversation across. So we already have one through Mosa Davida, but I think the council needs to be addressed. You know, we need to have conversations with them as well as obviously superintendent being part of the group.
So I think the one thing I wonder, and this is a wondering, is I think this already, you know this, but we would have to be careful that what you are saying to the people on the city council is understood as one voice and not the whole board. But I think you already would be aware of that. The thing I don't know, and maybe Director Chu knows this, but I had never understood the ledge rep as being, I guess, broader than the primarily the WASDA role. So maybe that's, like, I hadn't understood its remit as being any form of advocacy at any level of government, but that's something maybe that I need to understand better or
I
dig
think-
into
no,
better.
no, I
but I
think
don't
that you're
recall it
still-
being that broad.
So
So I think
when
that's just
you
something
were-
is we need, sorry if I could just finish. I think we need to all be probably aligned on what that role is, so that we're all clear.
So I think when you were serving in that capacity, one of the things that we did regularly and we're looking at resuming is having regular meetings with our legislators. And that is part of the remit, right? It's a legislative advocacy piece. And I think that what we're proposing in the very short term is not really a proposal per se. It's just saying, hey, we're going to see if we can get more people advocating with us in terms of the state legislators. And I don't think there's anything there that needs a huge conversation. That's just something we're going to do to be pragmatic about how effective we can be with our advocacy. But beyond that, I think that the proposal, which is interesting to me because it has been proposed on multiple occasions over the years and just haven't executed, the proposal to have a joint session of the two organizations, the council and the board, the school board, is a really valuable one because that's one where it's not about one or two directors and whose voice, it's about the full council and the full board having a conversation about what's going on with their organizations. And I think that is exactly the reason, like you said, if that goes beyond the sort of legislative type of advocacy that we're doing, state and federal legislative advocacy, yeah, we do want to have that be a broader thing that the board is all part of. And that's exactly why I think it's being brought up here. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know exactly what issues you have with what's going on, but it really seems in line with anything that you've said. So, and certainly with how you carried out the legislative duties, right?
So as a bring,
It's not a negative, it's a question. I just want to make sure that we're like not ahead of where like the
Well-
expectation is. But I think the question is, what it sounds like is it's a proposal for two different things, potentially. One is a joint session where all of the board members would be available or present, or at least invited with all of the members of city council. The other one is an ongoing advocacy role to the city council. And I guess my main point is, and I'm not sure if that's also what you're saying. And I guess
No.
on that piece for budget in particular, I would just want to be mindful that if there's already conversations happening about our budget and it's happening between the mayor and our superintendent, that we just be mindful of that. So I separate those out, I think, a little bit.
So let me see if I could clarify that a bit. So for the legislation piece is more of I don't know that it will be ongoing, but it is to see what are they trying to achieve and what are we trying to achieve, and are there places where we cross so we could work together, so we're creating a larger voice across spaces. And so I think that's the discussion that we're talking about. Whether it will continue on year to year is a different story. But this is a thought that came to our mind as we're talking about looking ahead and looking at where we are now as a community, a learning community within the large city of Bellevue and its development. And so to make sure that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, because our city is good because of our school district, but if our school district is struggling, the city is going to have a major blow. And so I think it's good for both sides to know. And so that is the reason the idea of having a joint session so that we're all informed, not just the board or one council member, but everyone. And so as they have conversations and making decisions, that their decision may either have a positive or negative impact, and they're fully aware of that. To clarify?
Do other board directors have any comments? Director Shuey?
Yeah, I would have to give it more thought to have more developed of a perspective, but my initial reaction to it is that we have so much that we are already doing and need to focus on, both at the city council level and within the school board and the school district, and that we have historically with the legislature been us vis-a-vis the legislature, not as much of that parallel. We can do that informally and with individuals, but to take the time of 9 city council people and 5 school board directors to have those joint discussions, my first reaction is just that it seems like it could distract us from other things, and we could achieve the same results without having, you know, all of those elected officials all together for that extra length of time.
Director Watson? You didn't have your hands up.
I don't know.
But I saw you came on camera, so.
Yeah, I came on camera, well, mainly just to see if I could, but yeah, I feel like I don't understand it completely, the pros and cons. I think there's a cost benefit analysis here, you know, the cost of getting everybody together, but it's great to sort of build that relationship. But the yeah, I'm not sure, like with the benefit, like if we really that with some could get to, like, I don't know, the nitty gritty of the issues or whatever. But I guess whatever it is, I'd like more information and more understanding of how this would really work, how we would all get together, what we would really discuss, how would that be? But I feel like I'm willing to go along with it if you think it's a good idea. That's kind of like where I am. I wouldn't have come up with it myself, for sure.
I don't remember hearing a proposal in the past, but I don't know, like, I think it doesn't feel like something where we should say no. It feels like something that's worth exploring. So perhaps I think what I'm hearing across at least 1 or 2 other board directors is maybe, but I think also just being mindful, I don't know what conversations on this topic our superintendents had with the city mayor, but it feels like it could be worth exploring. And it doesn't sound like something you're proposing we do 12 times, but perhaps 1 time, and we maybe have that session and see how it goes. I wonder if perhaps, and I appreciate the transparency of bringing it here tonight, I wonder if it's worth maybe learning a little more and then continuing the discussion to explore what's possible.
Yeah, my intent wasn't to have a reoccurring one. It was trying to create that bridge. I understand that the bridge has never been made, and I also understand that over the years, various different board members have had conversations with the council of various different for different needs. The suggestion at this point of doing this is because as a city and as a district, we have evolved so much. And we're at an interesting junction of, where we are in decline of student body, and it does have a major impact of that is the growth of the city and also the cost. And so in taking pulse of some of the council and seeing what they know about our school district, it's interesting to know or get the understanding that they don't know. And I think that's harmful when left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And so I think it is not to, I think starting a conversation and getting more informed on both sides, I think it will be useful for all of us as we venture forward, as we are trying to make decisions as a school district or as a city and as a whole. And making sure that, because I think it is an element that we need to look at, especially when we say we're dedicated to serve each and every student, not push out a student out of the school district because they can't afford to live here, not push out a teacher because they can't, work here because the cost of living is too high. I mean, those things are all integrated, right? So that is why I suggested the idea of starting the conversation, start it, see where it goes. That's it. That's my one ask.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
it has
Wanna
been
make
asked
sure-
for. It has been asked for multiple times in the past. And it was asked for when I was president. It was asked for when Lynn was doing things. It was asked for back when Steve McConnell was doing things, and everyone thought, well, that might be a good idea. And the trend I've seen is that our district does an exceptional job of dealing with all the staffing relationships and work between that we, getting permitting and doing this and doing that. But there are still places where we are not viewed, we are not treated and with our work with the city as partners, but more clients or adversaries at certain points, depending on the things. And we have several common interests that are pretty significant that I think are coming up more and more often. Housing is one of them. Affordable housing is one. A second one is public safety. There's a huge push in our city for that, and we clearly have heard that from our community as well, keeping our kids safe when they're walking to school and making sure that our schools, the traffic patterns there are not creating safety hazards for anyone as well. And then in the permitting for our building renovations and building projects, there are times when we've been delayed, by getting a school open because of city permits and things. And I think that changing the nature of those relationships and extending it into a broader partnership might actually build more of that understanding that Jane is talking about. And so I thought it sounded like an interesting idea. Certainly we are busy, and so are they. But being busy trying to serve a huge overlapping community of population may actually increase our effectiveness if we had a better understanding of what was going on. And even in this case, like, sure, we have a representative on the planning committee, but there's probably a whole breadth of things that we could give as feedback beyond that if we had been involved with them. And now we come to October and we haven't really had that conversation, so we can't amplify the things that Melissa is pressing for and give them voice and help them, because we don't have the same level of exposure. So that was, I think, why I thought this sounded interesting, and I appreciated Jane bringing it up, and I wanted to support that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate I think the conversation, and I agree that tonight's study session will kind of provide another dimension, and then it will be interesting to hear what others also feel as we learn more. I want to make sure we have time for others to weigh in during director discussion. So I'm happy to go last. We have a little under 10 minutes. So I'm going to ask, just continuing on in alpha order, but skipping me, Director Shuey, do you have anything on director discussion? And then Director Watson, and then I might try to take a few minutes.
Sure. I would like to talk today only about one topic, and that is about the SROs, which the district is calling currently the CEO program. And in particular, I'd like to double click on and drill down into the nomenclature. Everyone has heard me talk about my concerns about the program at all. I appreciate that the district has heard the board on this issue, which I believe has expressed, sort of concern and making sure that we know what it is that we are implementing, and that we implement it to the extent we do implement it in a way that doesn't further marginalize the most marginalized parts of our community. So I want to thank district staff for doing the due diligence that they are now about to, or have already started engaging in before rolling it out. It's really important, and I feel that a lot of the community members who have expressed concern and started feeling like they weren't going to continue expressing it because they thought that there was no point, see some hope that they will be consulted, and the students who are most impacted are going to be included in that discussion. So thank you. One other thing about it is that I want to make sure that we don't end up saying, well, majority rules, because we all know that majority rules can lead to bad outcomes. So even if we get, and I don't know that we will, but even if we get a number of people in the majority saying that this is something we want, let's get more nuanced than doing a pure volume and numbers check on it. So the rest of my comment really is related to the nomenclature of CEO, which I understand stands for Community Engagement Officer. But one of the problems with the SRO program, and when SRO came about as a term, there was no preconceived notion of what SRO stood for. It's come to mean certain things, and I understand that we are looking to evolve transform, reform our program. But SRO at least had the benefit of being something that didn't have a meaning and we could sort of develop into. Whereas CEO and using that abbreviation exacerbates the power imbalance, which is part of the problem of the SROs in the first place. So you've got that imbalance that's pretty striking, that's very striking between law enforcement, who wields a disproportionate physical power in the form of lethal weapons, guns. It's a disproportionate power imbalance in that they've got the psychological power of being adults versus children in our schools. And they also have the institutional power and imbalance, which is over time. We know if we read our history that the police systems were largely developed in order to protect white landowners and slave owners from their property being, dissipated. So you've got that power imbalance that has led us already to have a very controversial issue. And now when we use the term CEO, we didn't pick another 3-letter word, and there are many of them, 3-letter words, 3-letter abbreviations, but the choice of CEO, we all know, conjures up images of being at the pinnacle of financial, organizational, institutional power. So using this term, in my view, reflects not only a failure to recognize the problem of the disproportionate power in the first place, but also it's an amplification of the gap. So I would say, as a school district, as people who are intellectually committed to using words in an appropriate way, that we need to use words and abbreviations in a way that doesn't obfuscate the reality and doesn't assign certain connotations that exacerbate a problem that is already a big problem. And so I'll stop there, but I hope that we can continue to re-examine the nomenclature of the program, whatever it ends up being, if it ends up being, and make sure that we don't cause further injustice by the pure name of the program. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Director Watson. We have 3 minutes, so I'll give you 2, and I would just ask for 1 for me. We started at 5:05 on director discussion.
I don't have
and we
much
just
to
ran
say,
out.
but I think I would just redraw everybody's attention to an email we probably got. The PTSA is so excited for being one of 3 PTAs chosen nationally by national, state PTA, and state to hold a big event here about internet safety at Sammamish High School on November 30th. And you all saw the email at it, and it's being funded by TikTok. So I do have some wonderings about that, but all in all, everyone's viewing it positively, and the district has agreed, I think, to allow it to go forward. So, in terms of the space. And so that's all I wanted to point everybody to. And that's it.
Okay, so I will take a minute or 2 just to say a few things. First, I just wanted to say from the update that Deputy Superintendent Collins gave, I personally take a lot of comfort and joy in the Heritage Language Project, as well as the details that were outlined regarding MLL, as well as the aeronautic pathway. I think those are all really exciting. So I think you often hear that we don't celebrate enough, and I just wanted to pause and say, I think those are worth celebrating, and thank you. The Heritage Language Project in particular, I mean, that really is, it does hit home for a lot of people, and I think that will resonate deeply. So thank you for that, I think, curiosity and reflection of our community. So thank you. I also just wanted to highlight a couple things. Our board directors got an update from Hank and Steve, and it's just worth letting other people in the community who are listening know that our opportunity for our superintendent application has opened. So the application process is open. And the main thing to know is that we all as board directors are going to be the ones who will make the decision with our community. And we will be very intently committed to doing that decision in an inclusive and open way. To be fair to our candidates and our applicants, we are not supposed to be then talking to you about people you happen to think would be great candidates. Rather, if that happens, we will direct you to our search consultants. And that's to ensure that we are equitable and fair to those who apply. So I think board directors know that from an email that came through Hank and Steve. The final thing I'll just tell board directors, which I thought you would get a kick out of, and I was going to email you, but Steve is getting married this weekend. So I thought I would just tell you that. I just learned that by email, and I thought you would like that. So with that, I think we are going to recess our session. We have an executive session, and we'll come back
Can I
after our
just
study session. Yes.
just one quick comment?
Sure.
I just want to say thank you very much for changing the language project, or I should say having the language project titled Heritage Language versus calling it Foreign Language. I think that's a great move. I think it brings us all together and celebrates who we are as a community and not puts people at making them feel like they're foreigners. So great move.
Okay, so before we go to our executive session, I'm just going to read the purpose of it. The purpose of tonight's executive session is to evaluate complaints brought against a public employee and to discuss with our legal counsel representing the district potential litigation to which our district could become party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in adverse legal or financial consequence to our district. So with that, we recess to our executive session. And that will be followed then by our study session. Sorry?
Before we entirely recess, could I just make a comment about that? Like, I just want to be clear to the public that, well, one of the board's roles has to do with overseeing the district, but our real role is overseeing the superintendent and not the district. And it is our superintendent who is charged with taking care of all of the operational and employment matters within the district. And we will support our superintendent to do that work and to be available and to ensure that our values and so forth are adhered to through that work. But the fact that the board isn't making public comments on individual employment processes is not an indication of whether or not the board cares or is letting go of its obligation. Our obligation is to support the superintendent to ensure that such matters are tended to according to our values and our policies and our expectations. So I just wanted to call that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Chu. So with that, we recess to the executive session.
Before folks recess, it's just there to check. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, we are back from our executive session and we are now going to item 8, which is our study session.
Are we in a break or are we in study session?